Hello and welcome to this webinar session offered by Suzy Lamplugh Trust in relation to personal safety in the workplace, protecting lone and frontline workers. My name is Arad Parsi. It's a privilege to be here with you today. I'm Head of Business Development at the Trust, and over the next 20 to 25 minutes, I will be running through a number of slides to tell you a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and how our work can be quite important to various organizations in regards to safeguarding employees from harassment, aggression, and violence in the workplace. The agenda for the day is an introduction to the Trust, who we are and what we do. We'll be covering some definitions and stats on lone working and personal safety. And we will go a little bit deeper into the training products currently on offer from the Trust. I will also be covering some very key information in relation to stalking. Stalking is a personal safety issue, and the Trust has had for a number of years a lot of expertise in dealing with various stalking victims, but also other service providers in the sector. So because it overlaps with personal safety of employees, it's quite important for us to make a reference to that and invite you to use our free services when it comes to stalking, of course. I will explain more about that as we go along, and then we'll have a look at some of our current partners and testimonials for you to read, and we'll finish the session by recapping some of the key points that we've discussed today. Suzy Lamplugh Trust was established in 1986 following the disappearance of 25-year-old Suzy Lamplugh, who was a estate agent who went to meet a client, but unfortunately she never returned back to work. She was, of course, a lone worker at the time that she went missing. Since then, the Trust has pioneered personal safety as a life skill and a public policy priority. On the day that Suzy went missing, she was scheduled to meet a Mr. Kipper very early in the afternoon at about 20 to 1, and this was in late July 1986. And to give you a little bit more context about the time, computers were certainly around, but they were not as widely used as they are used today. We certainly didn't have the benefit of Microsoft Office, shared calendars, and of course, smart devices were not born yet. So we're talking about a time that people used good old-fashioned paper diaries on their desks. And what Suzy had recorded in her diary was a meeting with a Mr. 40 p.m. What's very important is the fact that Suzy left the office to go and meet this client for a viewing of a flat in Fulham. And she wasn't actually reported to the police as missing until 6:45. In fact, for over 6 hours, regretfully, her colleagues had not noticed the fact that she wasn't back in the office. That played, unfortunately, a crucial part because the search for her started many hours after she had actually gone missing. Now, she was never found, and her killers were never brought to justice. Her killer, rather, was never brought to justice, and she was eventually declared dead 7 years after going missing in 1993. The slogan for the Trust is "Live Life Safe," and where that comes from is an interview with Paul Lamplugh, Suzy's late father, who in an interview said that Suzy's motto in life was to live life to the full, and she certainly knew how to do that. What she probably didn't know was how to live life safe. Now, the Trust was set up by Suzy's parents 6 months after she went missing in December of 1986, and for 32 years, nearly now 33 years, it's been regarded as field expert in lone working and personal safety training. And we continue to work towards reducing the risk of harassment, violence, and aggression by educating through campaigning and through provision of support to people to allow them to upskill them to take the steps necessary to avoid, mitigate, and manage risks at work. Although it has to be said that the training workshops that we offer give the attendees and the trainees the life skills needed to be able to apply personal safety skills across all aspects of their lives, and not just it's not just related to their professional life. So as a part of our work, we provide education. This is through personal safety training workshops. These can be half day long or full day. We will be sending an e-format of our training and consultancy brochure to everybody who has attended this particular session. And in that you will see the various topic areas that are covered. I suppose the main difference between a full day and a half day workshop is that we do quite a lot of conflict resolution and conflict management in the full day course, which the half day course doesn't include. But there are very many different topics, including setting boundaries around violence and aggression, various definitions, dynamic risk assessments, and various other tips that are covered through these workshops. Now, these workshops are very hands-on. They include quite a lot of interactive group work and lots of peer learning. We keep the size of the workshop to 16, that's 1/6 delegates in a setting. And this is to ensure quality and to ensure that the objective of the workshop is achieved, which is to cause behavior change in people. So people come onto the workshops and they leave having made pledges that they will do things differently to safeguard themselves and even their colleagues as a consequence of their behaviors. We offer consultancy for those of you who work for organizations that either don't have a personal safety policy, or alternatively you may have one which is out of date and you would like it to be reviewed and updated. Those services are available. We have training consultants and personal safety leads whose expertise is that sort of consultancy work. We do quite a lot of campaigning, of course, as a part of the Trust's work. Our longest running campaign has been the licensing of the operators and drivers of minicabs and private hire vehicles in London. Of course, we know that each year hundreds of crimes, including unfortunately rape and sexual assault, are linked to illegal and unlicensed minicab drivers. And this is why, whilst we've achieved a lot in that space, it is still a running campaign, and we are still working with various stakeholders to be able to drive greater change and implement better practices with organizations in that sector. In addition to that, we have the National Stalking Helpline. As I said a little bit earlier, we are experts in stalking training and consultancy, and we have a free of charge service, National Stalking Helpline service, which is really out there for various victims of stalking. It doesn't matter whether it's a new thing or it's been ongoing for a number of years. If people need help with that, they can call the number. And at the end of this presentation, not only I will give you some stats about stalking, which is relevant to, of course, personal safety issues in the workplace, but also there will be some information shared with you in relation to the numbers that you can call or refer colleagues to, in case you do come across colleagues who have had that sort of experience at work or outside of work. So what is lone working? Well, the HSE's definition of a lone worker is anyone who's really working by their own and without any close or direct supervision. Working alone is, of course, not illegal, and it is often perfectly safe to do so. However, the law requires employers to consider and deal with any health and safety risk for people whilst they're at work. An example of this is frontline workers. Now, many frontline workers end up doing quite a lot of lone working as a part of the business as usual activities in their regular day job. Examples of lone working which may not immediately come to mind are when you're business traveling, you're technically lone working, although there are other people around you. When you go to business meetings on client sites, when you're offsite, if you work for an organization where there are colleagues who are field-based and they go out, typically sales teams, for example, you will end up being classified legally as a lone worker because you're not being directly supervised or closely supervised by your employer. Also, working late or early in the office will mean that you're a lone worker. And there are very many other examples, but for the purpose of this session, those two have been captured there. In addition to that, again, there is a long list of the sort of risks that lone workers could come across on a regular basis, but these are some of the common ones. Verbal abuse, insults, aggression and violence, and this could unfortunately be from clients or fellow colleagues. Unfamiliar or risky locations, unfamiliar territory, as I mentioned, if you are field-based. But of course, we come across a lot of organizations who have staff members going into unknown locations. Surveyors, for example, tend to do that quite a lot. Property management people, going into risky locations, derelict buildings, or places where there may be other risks, environmental risks associated with them. Anxious clients are, of course, there on that list. And as I said, stalking is a very common risk. So what is personal safety? From a definitions point of view, the Lamplugh Trust's definition of personal safety is an individual's ability to go about their everyday life free from the threat or fear of psychological, emotional, or physical harm from others. What that means in practice is reducing the potential of becoming a victim of aggression and violence. That it really is, in a nutshell, what it means in practice. And what we do through the personal safety and lone working training workshops that we offer is that we make sure the delegates who attend these courses walk away with a much greater awareness of risks by actually acknowledging what those risks are by talking about them. And in exchange, whilst they talk and acknowledge those risks, we go ahead and train them and give them the tools to strengthen their ability to manage those risks. So these workshops are not about raising concerns or raising anxiety levels. It's about getting to the truth and getting delegates to admit that there are some risks that are worth thinking about. And then on the back of that, they are given the skills to be able to manage those risks. They will walk away with a much greater understanding of causes of aggression. As I said earlier, there is a lot of boundary setting around aggression and violence, and effectively for the delegates to understand what could potentially lead to aggression. And on the back of that, again, being upskilled with managing conflict techniques, conflict resolution techniques, and so forth. And then finally, it's really about building confidence in delegates and in trainees to ensure that they can walk away at the end of the workshop feeling empowered and feeling quite confident that yes, there are risks, but there are good, solid ways, credible ways of assessing those risks, of mitigating against them and avoiding them as much as possible. And of course, acknowledging that where, for whatever reason, a very small opportunity might arise for someone to still exert aggression and violence towards you, where that risk comes up, for delegates to be able to feel confident about the fact that they can manage that situation. Now, personal safety is common sense. We all say that, but actually, many times I've come across, sitting in different workshops, people admitting to the fact that it is common sense, but it's not always, unfortunately, common practice. And that's why the core objective of these training courses is really about, as I said, upskilling the workers, but it's about driving changing behaviors. So they start immediately putting that common sense into common practice to protect themselves and, of course, to protect the wider workforce in collaboration with their colleagues. So just to give you some numbers and some stats about the seriousness of it. These are the crime survey for England and Wales 2017, and unfortunately I don't have the 2018 figures yet. But if you look at that, an astonishing 24% of all violent incidents in that year, in 2017, took place on work premises. That's a quarter, nearly enough, a quarter of all violent incidents in England and Wales being work-related. And roughly an estimated 1.3% of working adults becoming a victim to either one or more violent incidents at work. Again, from a numbers point of view, 326,000 adults in employment experience work-related violence, including threats and physical assault. And then there were estimated to have been 642,000 incidents of violence at work, with 269,000 assaults, physical assaults. Now, we all are familiar with the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and the fact that employers have a duty to protect the safety of their staff, the health and safety. But in particular, the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999 go on to say that employers must consider the risks to employees, including the risk of reasonably foreseeable violence. They then need to decide how significant those risks are, what to do to prevent or control those risks, and actually develop clear management plans with the staff. Now, unfortunately, some people think that this is purely the duty of the employer, but actually we reiterate this very much in the workshops to say that whilst the employers have a legal obligation to do all of what we just said, employees need to attend training, need to sign up to schemes, need to follow policies, need to be aware of policies, and need to collaborate and work with their employer in order for them to achieve the ultimate objective of reduction of harassment, aggression, and violence at work together. As far as the training provisions available from the Trust, we have awareness raising talks. That's one product. These are some of the products that these are the key products, I suppose, that we offer. Awareness raising talks, these are where within an organization, you decide that you want to provide your staff with an awareness of personal safety issues. But the actual level of risk may very well not require half-day or full-day training courses. In those scenarios where you have managers of lone workers and they need to have an overview of the legal aspects of lone working, and they need to learn much more about the fundamentals of good personal safety and lone working practices, we can offer you manager briefings. The workshops that I have referred to already in this presentation, lone working personal safety training, half day or full day, these are all about raising awareness, acknowledging concerns and risks, and then upskilling the staff to be able to understand what aggression and violence is all about, how it comes about, and then it goes on to dynamic risk assessments, various personal safety practices that they can put into place, and of course conflict resolution and conflict management. The Train the Trainer course is really for organizations with a few hundred to a few thousand staff members to train. In those instances, it's not economically viable for you to commission single-day workshops with us, accommodating only 16 people in a setting. So what a lot of large organizations do is that they come to us, or they send delegates to us who get trained in a 2-day long Train the Trainer course, and are given the skills to be able to go back to their organization and begin training various teams and functions. They are given all the material, all the course content. They are given an assessment on the second day as they present to the senior trainings here at the Trust, who is an independent, and she actually doesn't work for the Trust directly. She's a partner organization, works for her own company, a partner organization, and completely independent of the Trust to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest. They are, as I said, assessed and sent back with the collateral needed to be able to go back to work, plan immediately their very first workshop and begin to deliver. The bespoke Train the Trainer course is really, again, for large organizations who need the Train the Trainer course, but the sheer size of their workforce is such that they need in excess of 6 champions. So internal trainers exceeding 5 or 6 employees, and you'll be looking at a bespoke train-the-trainer course where we actually come to you, we deliver the course on your premises to your staff exclusively. The regular train-the-trainer course is an open access course, which means that you can have people from other industries and sectors taking part, but the bespoke one will be tailor-made to the needs of your organization only. And as I said earlier, we also do quite a lot of policy writing work and policy reviews and so forth, which you can certainly query about, and I can provide you with more details. These are some of the topics that I've made references to that we cover. And again, this is certainly not a comprehensive list, but it is a list that highlights the key areas. Dynamic risk assessing systems, of course, ensuring that staff are traceable in case of emergencies. Home visits for those of you who have colleagues that go into people's homes. Those of you who have colleagues that travel nationally or internationally, there is quite a lot on traveling safely. Conflict management, de-escalation, diffusion, reflective techniques, and so forth. In addition to that, one big key part of it is really about getting your employers to understand what measures you already have in place when it comes to post-incident support and reporting incidents. And that is not just about reporting incidents, but it's also about reporting near misses to make sure that next time a near miss it doesn't become a real incident, doesn't escalate to a real incident. So I've included a couple of slides here about the dynamic risk assessment, and this is really just to highlight to you that there is a structure with the dynamic risk assessment exercises that they do, and it really is about making sure that trainees walk away with a thorough understanding of how to carry out dynamic risk assessment, but also for them to fully appreciate that they do quite a bit of this before they go into a situation, but actually they are also taught to do quite a lot of in-the-moment assessments. This is one of the models that we use, although there are other models. Delegates are pretty much taught how to think and how to assess people, environment, and tasks. So they are tasked with and trained to actually look out for what is it about the people or the environment that they may go into, or the actual tasks at hand that may expose them to a greater risk of aggression and violence. And they are subsequently taught in group work sessions how to avoid, reduce, and manage those risks. And as I said, this is very much about what you do as pre-assessment, how you assess during and in the moment, and obviously at the time of an incident or an event should anything go wrong. So these were just a couple of slides that I've put in there because I know I've made references to dynamic risk assessments, but I just wanted to clarify what that model is all about. I did mention at the beginning that there is a slide towards the end of this presentation referring to stalking. So what is stalking? Well, of course, stalking is a pattern of fixated and obsessive behavior. It's intrusive, it causes fear of violence and creates alarm and distress in victims. It's unwanted, it's persistent, and stalkers can really be from any walk of life. They could be partners, ex-partners, witnesses, clients, suspects, old university friends. They could really be anybody. And to give you some stats on how serious stalking is as a crime nowadays, 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men in the UK will be stalked in their lifetime. And it is a crime that, according to the England and Wales Crime Survey, is as pervasive as domestic abuse. 80% of our callers tend to be women, the remaining 20% men. And again, in that CSEW report in 2017, an estimated 1,144,000 adults had experienced stalking in that year alone. Now, where this becomes relevant to you as a decision maker, and where it becomes relevant to the personal safety of your colleagues, is that up to 21 people around the victim are affected, including parents, relatives, children, and colleagues. Stalking perpetrators go to incredible lengths to be able to get to their victim. And in 10%, in just over 10% of the cases that we've come across, and we have dealt with 26,000 victims since 2010. In 10% of those cases, colleagues have been targeted, and perpetrators almost forcefully at times on the phone, by email and so forth, trying to extract information. So it is, unfortunately, in case you have colleagues who have experience or are experiencing stalking, it is something that may spill over, and it may put other colleagues of the victim at risk. And it's something that certainly in larger organizations where we deal with a workforce of a thousand or two or more, we do come across regular cases of stalking which HR have to handle. And as I said, we have, in case you need, stalking training expertise. But in addition to that, the National Stalking Helpline is available for organizations representing a victim, or alternatively for stalking victims themselves to be able to contact us. And they are provided with support through telephone conversations, emails, web pages, and so forth. I won't go through this slide. I'll leave that for you to review at your leisure when we send you the recording. But some of the partners that we're currently working with, and also some of their testimonials on us. There are more testimonials available from different sectors in case you wish to query about those. And of course, the takeaways for the day, because we're now coming up to 26 or 27 minutes, prevalence of harassment, aggression, and violence is significantly high. And in certain sectors, it is actually on the increase, unfortunately. That, to give you an example of that, retail would be one of those. Personal safety training will give your employees the tools to be able to make safer personal safety choices. It will allow them to learn how to pre-assess situations, how to implement measures to safeguard themselves, but also how not to become complacent. Because this isn't about a death by PowerPoint day with another company. This is about changing their behaviors, and it's about hands-on group work, interactive group work, and peer learning. Upskilling the staff will obviously lead to reduction, mitigation, and management of risk, as we said earlier. It will lead to behavioral change, and it will allow the workforce to make the common sense stuff common practice in their day-to-day routines. It also ensures that employees are less likely to become complacent, given both individual and team approaches to personal safety matters, because it varies from one organization to the other. And of course, a reduction in incidents involving aggression, violence, harassment, and so forth lead to a happier workforce. Anxiety, depression, lack of productivity, these are just some of the some of the tens of behaviors that victims tend to exhibit and show after an assault, after a prolonged period of harassment, or if they've had to face or they do face on a regular basis aggression because of the type of job that they do. So reducing those incidents will lead to a happier workforce, greater productivity, greater staff retention, and of course a reduction in cost of business. And on that note, as far as the cost of business is concerned, we are doing a study with a leading UK university currently to have a look at the cost of business as far as personal safety matters are concerned. And if you wish to be a part of that, then please feel free to drop me a line and we will sign you up for that study. That leaves me with the last slide, as I said, the Suzy Lamplugh Trust website, the Stalking Helpline number, and some of the social media ways of contacting us and seeing our activities. I would very much like to take this opportunity to thank you for attending the session. I hope that it has been useful, and you will receive an email from us with the recording, with the slides, and of course with my personal email address should you wish to make any queries in the meantime. Thank you again for attending, and I wish you well.